Will, 30, Los Angeles.
Hey, what's up, guys? So anyway, I just wanted to ask you why you think that Asians are not considered a minority whenever liberals talk about, how disadvantaged the Hispanic community is or the African community. Like, how come they never bring up how disadvantaged the Asians are when, in fact, they're not?
Well, first off, because they've screwed up every word in the dictionary. They use the word minority. Los Angeles is half Hispanic and 4% Asian, and they call the Hispanics the minority.
Yeah.
And they don't refer to Asians as minority. So that's insane.
Minority is a catch-all word for someone in a lower socioeconomic class who's not doing as well.
It used to mean somebody who there was lesser of than in the populace.
Statistically,
Yeah, but now it just means someone is not doing well, which is weird. But I don't agree with that. The Asians kick ass, and they do it with no representation. They're not represented. You know, this thing where this nonsense BS we do all the time where it's like, hey, we need the law enforcement community to reflect the community. We need the fire department. We need the city council to reflect the community. Asians don't need that. They don't need teachers. They don't need firemen. They don't need city council. They don't need anybody. I don't know how many Asian firemen you guys have ever seen, Asian cops you've ever seen.
They need a violin, a quiet room.
Yes. Do you know how, sometimes a cello, do you know how underrepresented they are in the Congress? Do you go all the way down the line? Does anyone we need a person of Asian descent as Secretary of State or whatever it is. They don't have any representation. They don't need representation. Representation doesn't help.
Yeah.
We see... We're insane because we think if you have a black mayor, then you're not going to have any problems with the black community, or there's not going to be problems or poverty or underschooling or whatever. Somehow the black mayor, or we'll get a black police chief. And then when somebody shoots somebody, whether it's a cop shooting somebody or another black guy shooting another black guy, we'll trot the black chief out there and he'll have the press conference and everyone will go, well, they must be doing something. That's called racist. That's a racist thought. See, the Asians, they don't think that way. They're smarter than we are. Here's what we do.
That's racist too, actually.
Yeah, here's what we do. Here's how it works. Black folk are out doing whatever black folk are doing. Hispanics are out doing whatever Hispanics are doing. Whitey, we wring our hands. We sit around and go, ooh, what did we do wrong? How can we fix this? How can we throw more money at the problem? What did we do wrong? Let's go find a mirror. Asians... They're not in that group, they're not in this group, and they're not in the hand-wringing group. They just go out and kick ass. So while we're busy rubbing the top layer of skin off our hands, they're just keeping their families together, starting businesses, getting educated, and kicking our asses. That's what they do. That's how you get along. That's how... nobody needs to take a knee for the Asians. Nobody needs to sit anything out. Nobody needs to have a symposium. Hey, Obama.
No candles through plates.
No candles through plates. Obama's going to do a 1 hour live honest talk on race, except for guess who's not coming up? Asians. Asians aren't going to break into that conversation. Why? Too busy kicking ass. Any Asians need to be in the audience when Obama has a race summit? Nope. Too busy kicking ass. Any leaders from the Asian community need to stand up and speak in platitudes to the millions of people at home who don't give a crap and aren't going to do anything? No. Too busy kicking ass.
And
now, by the way, pretty soon, Whitey, we're going to get to be a minority too because the Asians are beating us. In terms of median income and school and education and all the things that matter, they beat us. So how does that work? How did we screw up, blue-eyed devil? How did we let these little scoundrels get above us? Hold on, I thought we were racist. Remember the last Klan rally? And I was explaining we can't just keep focusing on black, Hispanic. We're screwing up.
Yeah.
We blink your eyes, and the Jews and the Asians have leapfrogged us. Whoa, we're so racist. It's so nuts. It's insane. It's insane. The Asians kick our ass, and aren't considered a minority group and aren't represented or underrepresented, or you know what represents? They're represented in the who cares department. They don't care. They don't care what the principal. They don't care what his or her nationality is. They don't care what the fire chief or the chief of police, senator, or the president. Don't care. Don't care. Too busy kicking ass. Why? Uh-oh. I hope David Wild is sitting down. They focus on family and education. And thus, there's nothing we can do about it. Maybe we've tried to hold them down. We can't.
God knows.
Family-oriented, education-oriented. Nothing we can do, Gavin Newsom. So keep going with your plans to shut down those predatory check cashing places. I'm sure your black and Hispanic community will thrive in just a few months when you get that legislation pushed through, right?
No.
Idiots. Now here's the only question: do they know what they're doing? Does Gavin Newsom know he's a liar? Do they not know what they're doing? I know what they're doing. Go look at it. The Asians stay together. They don't do a lot of beating of their kids either. A little bit lighter than that than the rest of us.
Or shaming.
They do more shaming.
Shame ribbons.
But they don't physically put their hands on their kids, which then makes it easier for you to put your hands on a civilian or a cop or anyone else once you get out of high school, if in fact you do make it out of high school. So they keep the family together. They focus on the education. And then they basically just use our system. Because we have a system, and here's how our system works. See, in many parts of the country, I've never really thought about it, but let's just look at it this way. Hold on, is Will still there? Sorry, you got me fired up. Will?
What you did here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
I'll tell you what. I will simplify it because I'll do it for myself. It'll be easier for me. I've never really thought of it this way, but here's the deal. We, in this country, have something called a system, and our system can either work for you or work against you. Now, if you're coming from China or North Korea or many other parts of the world, it does not matter what your work ethic is, and it doesn't really matter about family and education and working weekends and any of that, because you have a system that that will not grow and nurture that.
Oh, in those
because of the
countries.
system, in those systems.
Yeah.
It doesn't reward it. It doesn't work. So you can come from China or North Korea or whatever. You could be the most industrious, hardest working. I'm going to work every weekend and I'm going to take classes every night and all that kind of stuff. You'll go right back into a system. Get in your gray pajamas and ride those bicycles from the 50s with too much fender and too much chain guard. We don't need the chain guard going all the way. Just the top part of the chain, not the bottom. Not the bottom.
It's
know what's
overkill.
going under there. It's overkill in the chain guard department.
We get it. We got to guard the
You know
chain.
what we do here in the United States? We take off our chain guard and we ride wheelies. Okay. So you have a system. Now, we have a system. Guess how our system works. Our system rewards education, intact families, most of all, just good old family, just good old fashioned like chutzpah, hard work, and grit.
Yeah.
That's our system.
It's the best chance for success.
Yeah.
Statistically.
So they come from a place where all the grit and the hard work and the family and education, I mean, look, it'll keep your head above water, but you ain't taking over. Then you come here, United States, well, all you got to do is all those things you were going to do over there that weren't going to serve you, but you come over here and you get to take over with that. Now, it's perfect because what we do is we got whitey, black man, Hispanic man, and we're all going to argue over the system and how it's rigged and how we wish we could tell you it wasn't rigged, but it is rigged. And we'll argue over systemic this and we'll argue over the cops that and open season on them and all that. Meanwhile, the Asians are going, look at all those retarded people.
The race has already begun.
They're going to be laughing their ass off. Obama's have another symposium on race. Oh, good, an honest, what is it, an honest dialogue? This is going to be good. All right, let's all get to work. And then they go kick our ass because we have a system that focuses much less on color and much more on ass kicking. If color was the main thing and ethnicity was the main thing we focused on, then we would be holding back the Eastern Indian folk and the Asian folk and folks, Jewish folks and folks of that nature. We don't. we focus on how much ass kicking do you do, how much family do you focus on, and how much education. That's how it works. And that's why the Asians are kicking butt with no representation at all, because they realize it doesn't matter what color or what the gender of the president is. It's not going to affect our little world.
Purely symbolic.
Where we bust our ass. Yes. Thank you. That was inspirational.
Thanks, Will.
Hey, Will. Oh, Will's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm here.
Are you Asian?
Yeah, I'm actually half Chinese.
Hey!
Yeah.
Get to work.
What are you doing, man?
I'm a CPA. Big surprise.
Yeah.
What?
All right. What'd your family teach you? Were the education and everything?
Yeah, it was. If you don't get A's, you're pretty much worthless.
What instrument did you play? Cello or violin or piano?
I didn't play any instrument.
What?
I was shamed that way.
I haven't talked to these folks in 21
But
years.
my, I had
It was 9
my
when
mom's
they
Mexican.
exiled it.
My mom's Mexican and my dad's Chinese,
Ah,
so
okay. There you go.
I was exposed to both sides of the coin, and I've got Mexican relatives that didn't
You
study,
support.
and that wasn't their priority, and some of them went to prison.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, but I was surrounded mostly amongst my Chinese relatives, my Chinese side.
Mhm.
So that structure to excel and do well in school was always there. And even coming from my mom, who, even though she's Mexican ethnically, her mentality was very much Asian. So,
Well, the bottom line that I found out here with a lot of folks, and the Hispanics in Southern California are very much this way, but I've worked with a lot of white guys this way too. It's not that they don't work hard. They work hard. People get into this thing all the time where it's like, you don't think these guys work hard? Yes, they work hard. I used to work
busting their
hard.
ass all the
I
time.
busted my ass cleaning carpets and digging ditches and whatever. And then the weekend would come around and they'd get drunk. They'd spend all their money and they'd go right back to working hard. What you need to do is spend your weekends taking night classes and other things to not have to go back to the working
Get off
hard
the
thing.
carousel.
Yes, get off of the carousel. Thank you, Will. I appreciate it. But I'll tell you one thing, at least it's a SoCal thing, very endearing, and I've been around long enough to see a lot of this. A lot of these guys, Hispanic guys, they work in the trades, electrician, mason, stuff like that. They'll start bringing their sons around. Now, it is this kind of a carousel thing, but it's at least a trade. Mm-hmm. They bring their sons. My electrician, the Jose's, it's nice. Little Jose is just called Gordo, which is great
wait a second.
because since he was age 11, it was called Fat.
Fatty.
Just called him
boy?
Fat. Yeah, they're both good guys. I'm very. He's a big boy. I'm happy that I convinced Jose Sr. to buy a house in San Fernando Valley, like $100,000, like a million years ago. But now when these guys come to do work for me, dad's dad and son's 23, and he's calling the shots. I mean, dad's still in charge, but the son,
He's taking the leadership role.
productive carousel.
working with him
Right.
for so many years, is basically a journeyman electrician, because at age 9, he was going out with him,
Yep.
working, learning how to do this. How's it going?
We saw the plans.
How are you coping with the coping?
Well, let me just say that I think I need to go out more
Really?
because this retaining wall, I feel like we're building a dam,
Oh.
a hydro. It's like the Hoover Dam. It's a hydro, like it's going to be
There'll
serious.
actually be day laborers entombed in
Yeah,
it.
yes, it will be like the Great Wall of China.
Yes.
It will take so long, and it will be so deep and so high that
I've said it once, I'll say it again, and I'll be very quick about it. All of you who claim to be simpatico with the government and who are cool with the administration and cool with the man, come out to Southern California, buy yourself a house in the hills, and try to build something.
yeah.
And then you will quickly go from Janine Garofalo to Ruby Ridge. just in a matter. I mean, there's a part that wants you to get on the roof of your house with a shotgun and shoot at anybody in a government vehicle. Like, what you have to do, the unnecessary acts. And by the way, it translates into hundreds of thousands of dollars that you throw literally into a hole in the ground because some a-hole engineer wanted to satisfy the city. He has no stake in it, and it is completely and utterly
and it's their
insane.
Time for power.
Yes, and all you do is cut the checks. My brother-in-law has a house. My sister and brother-in-law have a place up in Topanga Canyon. He wants to build a house on some land. He wanted to build a retaining wall, and he went to the geologist, and he went to the engineer, and the guy said, here's all you do. You drill caissons 64 feet deep. You do them 4 foot wide.
When you hit oil or bedrock, stop.
You do them 8 foot on center, and you do them for 200 feet. That is the Hoover goddamn dam. That is $300,000 and 40 cement trucks or 80 cement trucks. It's impossible to do, but what does the city care and what does the engineer care?
How is anything still standing according to their standards now?
Please, all right. Now, Joel McHale, I must stand up and yell at every goddamn engineer and every goddamn city bureaucrat in this city.
Look what you've done.
Number 2.
Standing, everyone.
Let me say this. Joel, you like this tea?
I was so excited for the Oprah clip.
You think about posters with cats on it.
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
Hang in
Okay.
there. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, if you want to do any building in this goddamn city, especially if it's up in the hills, you must either build the Hoover Dam or Hitler's bunker.
Right.
Why? Because we're an earthquake country. Because it's dangerous, and we hide behind safety. We hide behind the veil of safety. Hey, just playing it safe. Hey, better safe than sorry. Hey, we're an earthquake country. My house was built in 1929. It has no reinforced concrete, no plywood, because plywood wasn't invented, no Simpson straps, no HDs, no hold downs, no all thread, no J bolts, no nothing. 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 They had some poor Irish guy, poor foundation, and they set a house on it.
He sweated blood.
That was it. There was no straps and no Tico clips and no 835s and no continuous shear wall and no moments and no nothing. No nailing schedule, no inspector, no nothing. Now, nothing.
Nothing.
Now, that house was built in 1929, and you know where it is today? Right the F where it was put. By all the dead people with no hold downs and no rebar and no bunkers and no straps and no nothing. Why? It's an earthquake country. It's an earthquake country. Now, what do you think the house did, you retards? Did it sprout legs and run to Montana every time there was an earthquake and then hustle back and land on its foundation? No! It sat there with no straps, no plywood, no nailing schedule, no hold downs, no all thread, no piers, no pylons, no grade beams, no retaining walls, nothing!
I don't know what we're yelling about!
80 goddamn years through every goddamn earthquake this city could put up, and it has moved not an inch. But yet, when I add a garage onto the back of the house, it has to withstand an oil tanker running aground and plowing into the side of it. Why? Because the structure that I build new can't be twice as strong as the existing house, can't be 10 times as strong, can't be 1,000 times as strong. It must be 1 million times as strong as the structure that it's next to. Well, first off, what do you think? Where do you think the kids are going to be when the next big one hits? In the garage? Hey, kids, we moved your cribs out to the garage so we can withstand a nuclear attack. Listen, you idiots, make the goddamn thing stronger than the existing structure, not 1 million times stronger. This is essentially a lanyard, and you want a piece of anchor chain in the middle of our lanyard. Make the next link stronger than the chain, but not 1 million times stronger, because it cost $1 million to make it 1 million times stronger, you pussy bureaucrats. Thank you. All right, let's get back to the Super Joe McHale. You got clips?
Yeah, I got a couple.
my one little thing there.
Yeah, good luck with your retaining wall. Good luck with your $200,000 retaining wall.
Number 4.
Good luck with your engineer who's a slave to the city, and the city bureaucrats are going to charge you thousands of dollars and tell you what you can and can't do.
I keep hearing the word survey about every 10 minutes, and I go, well, how much is that going to cost? They're like, we're not sure.
Oh, good luck with it. Good.
Sounds expensive.
Hire a geologist, hire a surveyor, hire an expediter to get it through the city, and good goddamn luck with your retaining wall.
Now, here's what I find so strange. You could build, as you were saying, you were going to build a bunker. You will build, right? But if you have trees surrounding your house anywhere in California, those trees could set your house on fire in a heartbeat. So why do they not make us cut down every tree near any house?
Well, they're not practical. They're interested in your money, not your safety.
Right.
Number one. Number two, they all hide, like I said, behind this safety thing. And nobody cares except for the guy who's cutting the checks. Man. That's you.
I just want to say that Adam is sweating.
And thus,
he pooped. And he whizzed all over his computer during that speech.
Thus, Joel McHale.
His eyes rolled back in his head.
He vomited. I don't think you could. He actually spoke through his vomit during that.
Joel McHale's going to be at the Grand Sierra Resort Casino in Reno, Nevada, so he can build a retaining wall. That's right. You will, if you go out and attend the show, you will pay for about 2 feet of one grade beam.
That's right.
Thank you.
You make a good point, which is that life before inspectors wasn't a disaster. My house was built in 1914. It's still sitting in Koreatown. It's fine.
That trap. We're an earthquake country. What country were we in before?
You are
Brazil?
Strasser.
Oh no.
Look at the Romans.
Yes.
Look at the Greeks.
That's right.
Look at the Chinese. What they built thousands upon thousands of years ago, and it's still standing.
There's a good likelihood, Joel, that you're going to hear the same rant again tonight at dinner. So I hope you liked it.
We're an earthquake country.
My wife can't wait for that.
Earthquake country.
I hope your wife.
Adam, you know my wife's name?
Earthquake country. Yes, I do.
What is it?
Earthquake country.
What is it? You know this.
Don't tell me. Her name is Sarah.
Yeah!
Oh my God!
Yeah!
Thank you.
I was saying, we were talking about hard work and showing up on time and sort of a bunch of stuff that you and I share core values about.
Right.
And I said, I do think it's easy. I said, Adam, I think we disagree on this. I do think it's easier if you're a white male, that there's an amount of privilege that we have that's just kind of baked in that I think you reject. And you said something that, again, long form, was a nuanced answer. And I was so glad to hear you say it, and it ties into the video thing you just made. You said, no, I'm not saying there's not an advantage. I'm just saying I don't think it helps the people who aren't to dwell on that fact, for them to dwell on the fact.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. Couple things. I don't like the word privilege because I'm white and I grew up with zero privilege. I may have had advantages over the Boyd brothers who I played Pop Warner football with and lived in Compton, but there was certainly nothing. If you look up the word privilege, there's nothing about.
But what that word speaks to, here's what I think that word speaks to, right? What it speaks to is real studies you could find really do show these subliminal biases that exist.
Yeah, but
so that you walk into a room as a tall, thin white guy who can make eye contact, say hello to somebody, they see you, and there's an immediate affinity.
Yes.
That it doesn't exist if they're looking at a black guy because of certain ways that they were acculturated, let's say.
Yes.
And so that is...
But you just said tall and thin. If I was short and fat, I could actually slide under the black guy, regardless of the color of my skin, because short men have a disadvantage in terms of hiring.
That's another disadvantage. But I mean, there are. I mean, the science on this.
There's science on short guys being hired.
Yeah, there is. But there's.
Well, how do you explain it?
But here's.
Well, what if you're short?
What if you're short?
Well, you're at a disadvantage.
I think that's true.
Why don't we talk about it?
I mean, sitting here, I'm 6 feet. You're 3?
No, I'm saying, look, Rosario Dawson has an advantage over me because she's hot. She's a woman, and she's multicultural or something, but she still has an advantage over me because she's hot. So how does my white privilege trump Rosario Dawson?
Well, it depends on the job you're going after, right?
And I don't know how many. And when I was 22 and she was 22, I don't know how many jobs I would get over her. I honestly don't. But
no, there's no argument about. By the way, there is no argument, and that's also talking about scientific studies. That
there is. Well, Gary, you can look up privilege. I don't like the use of the word privilege, but there's advantages to being white. Agreed.
You just want the definition?
Show me white and lazy and black and super hardworking, and I'll take the black over that. And by the way, show me white with male pattern baldness and squatty, and I'll show you guys going to have to work harder than Rosario Dawson. Like I'm saying, there are preconceived notions, most of them based on some reality. When you see Asian guys, you think, okay, that guy's a little more studious, based on a history of them being more studious over white people. When I see a white guy and an Asian guy, I assume the Asian guy did better in school than the white guy did. And when I see the white guy in front of the Hispanic guy, I assume he did better than the Hispanic guy, not because I'm a bigot. It's based on a performance and a history and numbers.
But when that kind of thinking is institutionalized,
it's not thinking.
Yes, it is.
It's reacting.
When that kind of reacting is institutionalized, it does create for the individual.
It can't not be institutionalized.
It creates for the individual problems. But what I wanted to focus
everything. It's not a thinking. It's a reaction.
Yes, it's
and it's the reaction.
Bias. Yeah,
right.
Well, and I thought the deep thing that you said the other day in that video was when politicians say they're going to level the playing field, it's always a lie. Because
it's impossible.
It's the way that it's interesting because the framing of that I think is a brilliant thing, right? Because you're saying, look, I accept the fact that the playing field isn't equal. You and I can disagree about whether whose fault it is that there are parts of South Central that are dangerous to walk down, right? We can disagree about whether that's something that a bunch of individuals could have changed or not.
Well, it's the destruction of the family, but continue.
Well,
the point.
But your point.
I grew up with a guy named Tom Dent. He was a black guy, but his dad was a hand surgeon. And he was rich, and we'd go to his house and eat. I was white. He was black. He went to UCLA. Like I went and picked up garbage on a construction site. It's not all. I didn't have an advantage over Tom because Tom came from education, intact family, dad who was a professional, so on and so forth. So in that instance, he had the advantage over me. Well, it was not a level. I didn't have a level playing field. I had a black guy ahead of me who was on the high side of the playing field. So with that in mind, it's impossible to do. I'm simply saying.
But you had here's a thing that I sometimes don't hear you talk about, right? Because you're.
By the way, the weather is gorgeous on the East Coast, but you would know that, Adam, because you, former federal prosecutor Adam Corolla, just finished a stint getting hauled before Congress last week.
Yeah, I was thinking, I like former prosecutor, but I realized after I went in front of Congress and so many people would start every sentence was, as a former law professor, I wouldn't let any of my students get away with, and I feel like I could use that not only at home, domestically, when Lynette said something, the kid said something. Oh, look, as a former law professor, I can tell you that's not going to fly. Maybe I'll combine them. Maybe I'll say as a former law professor and prosecutor.
No, I think it's probably better to say former federal prosecutor, currently adjunct professor of law.
That's good. It's a little wordy, but it's good.
Yeah, but the adjunct, the people's eyes have already rolled back into their head, and they're already willing to accept anything you tell them.
So yeah, I was in D.C. talking to Congress about free speech. We were getting a lot accomplished, and that was a interesting voyage.
Who went before you? Was Ben Shapiro before you?
Yeah, Ben Shapiro was to my right, and then we had the guy. It was great. He was like, I think the former a dean of something at he's a former president of like Evergreen College and outside of Portland, and this guy was like 63, ponytail, wearing the glasses that Richard Dreyfuss wore in Jaws. Like, this guy was perfect and so crunchy, so perfect. It's also one of these things where I think to myself, you really do take this shit to your grave, don't you? Like the ponytail, the good vibes, the whole 9 yards. Like, is this really something? I mean, as you're knocking on the door of 70, you're still rocking the ponytail, still fighting for the indigenous people. It's weird to me that, you know, it's like, hey, when I was 9, I dressed up like a sailor and a cowboy, but I'm not doing it now.
You know, it reminds me of when you look at old pictures of you or me. I saw that picture of you, I think, cooking linguine on Lynette's third date, and I then looked at a picture of me when I had, you know, abundant hair, and you wonder, isn't the whole point of life that you evolve and you go through different stages and you're able to look at a picture and say, oh yeah, that was circa whatever year, or oh yeah, that was during the 80s or the 90s. You know, you watch these, CNN's got the 70s, the 80s, the 60s, the 90s, and you can look at the period and tell, you know, who's in whatever, you know, if they're present. And it's almost like you're not really present when you're still rocking the ponytail at knocking on the door of 70, don't you think?
It's interesting. And I guess for them, it's like, well, there's black ponytail, then there's salt and pepper ponytail, then there's gray ponytail, then there's bald with gray ponytail, and then there's hanging out of the casket, just the ponytail. That is probably how they can mark their lives. I had, it was an interesting sort of a little peek behind the curtain of, you know, how the government works or doesn't really work, which is sitting around and just bloviating. Well,
I was going to say, was there anybody there? Were they feeding you softballs? Were they cross-examining you? Were they doing a direct examination? What would you characterize it as?
The one, it was mostly letting me speak my piece. The one part of the whole thing that I found sort of bizarre, a little bit sad, and with a dusting of, geez, aren't you embarrassed? Every single black female started every single discussion with, as an African American, as a woman, as a black woman, I know firsthand what it's like. And then, you know, later on when they're asking who wants iced tea, they'd say, as a woman of color, I like the passion fruit. It's like they couldn't stop weaving it into everything that came out of their mouth. Like, it was, when we were done, I turned to Chris Maxipata and I said, can you believe that every single thing they said started with, as a black woman? Like, there weren't questions.
Wait, but who were these congresswomen?
I guess. They were young, they were old, they were everything in between. And that's
which committee? Do you remember which committee you were in front of?
I have no idea. But all I know is their entire life, world, identity, the way they see the world, the way they think the world sees them, everything is through the eyes of a sentence that starts as an African American woman. And
well, as an aging old rich white guy, should that be our new thing?
It'd be nice. I mean, they were explaining. One of them was, you know, saying to me, imagine how much strength I had to have going to one of the most elite prep schools in the country as an African American 14-year-old. And I was like, prep school? What is prep school? I don't know what that is. But yes, I can imagine the incredible burden you must have felt going to one of the nation's most elite prep schools. I was on a construction site picking up garbage, but I guess I'm the one with the privilege. Boy, did I screw that privilege up.
I know. So did I. I was knocking on the door selling Fuller brush door to door. Right before I got my next job at John Henry's ice cream parlor where Paco's is today.
Do we have have we have her intro? But
I'd love to hear it.
Is this the one where she was explaining to me about going to the school?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm very confident.
All right.
I'm confident enough that I'm opening my mic and telling you I have it. So
all right.
Here we go. It starts with the chairman sort of introing her a little bit. So you'll hear a little bit of a guy at first, and then we'll get right into it. Here we go.
And we'll now go to Ms. Plaskett for her questioning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to have a discussion on this topic. Mr. Zimmerman, I think that what you stated, Dr. Zimmerman, that universities and schools are for teaching individuals how to think. That's primary, as you stated, Mr. Lawrence. And Mr. Carolla, I couldn't be more than in agreement with you about the toughness that's needed by young people. And I have to tell you, you don't have to look at any other group that's tougher than young black men and women who go to universities, or I have gone to universities, or predominantly white schools. You got to eventually, if you're going to come out of there on top, have a thick skin. I went to one of the most elite private boarding schools in the early 80s when almost nobody was there that looked like me. You know what it's like to be an African-American Caribbean woman at a boarding school in Connecticut when you grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and being asked to give the black point of view in the classroom.
How about me giving the fucking poor point of view from North Hollywood while my mom was hammering welfare checks? My dad was napping on a goddamn sofa when I was being shipped like cattle from one grade to the next, never learning anything. Yes, it had to be. My heart bleeds for you, especially, back in the tumultuous 80s, the race-torn 80s. Jesus goddamn Christ. Well, to be fair, it took her 37 seconds to get into her ethnicity.
I know, right? The wind-up in the pit. But that's Congress. I've never understood. You got a witness up there. I understand they want the soundbite or this or that. But isn't it better to do the cross-examination of the witness and literally do a real cross-examination as opposed to a statement followed by, just affirm your agreement or disagreement? I never understood that.
Well, I think they call it grandstanding, but
yes,
I must say, when you get into hour 3 and every single comment from all the African-American women is simply about skin color, you start thinking, do you just see the world this way, and do you just think the world sees you this way? And if so, what a miserable existence. I just couldn't imagine everything being forced through the fucking pinhole of your ethnicity. Everything has to pass through that crazy straw in order to get to your brain. There can be no discussion. We could have been talking about Haas avocados up there, and they would have said, as an African-American woman, I know the love and loss of guacamole. I swear to God, there is nothing. When we were done, I looked at Chris Loxamana and I said, could you believe that? He sat and I said, all of it was just about being black. And he's like, holy shit, I couldn't believe it. I was like, you need a witness for this shit. And it's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing, but who's going to say anything? Oh, I guess me. I guess I'm going to say something.
By the way, I'd like to just say for the fans, the full video of that can be found. Just go to any of the Adam Corolla or Carolla Show social media, and you will be able to find the full 3-hour insanity if you'd like to watch.
It's beyond entertaining, by the way.
Yeah,
I watched it. I can't tell you. I was on the plane and I was able to download it before I got on, and it is some good theater.
Hi, I'm actor-comedian Adam Corolla, and now celebrated author of the new book, In 50 Years, We'll All Be Chicks. Today's lesson, bathroom etiquette. Did you know that peeing on the toilet seat is essentially the same as peeing on a coworker's ass?
Come on, man.
While 95% of Chad's whiz may have found its mark, I want to know about the other 5%, the collateral whiz. Chad, do you think I like sitting in your whiz?
No.
Well, then why the fuck wouldn't you lift the seat, jackstick? Well, it's 5 minutes after 9, which means people have been at work for approximately 5 minutes. And in that short period of time, Mark has managed to shit up the entire bathroom. What Mark should have done is done his offloading at home before he came to work.
Sorry, Adam, I really had to go, man.
Mark, you've been employed here for 8 years and you can't get your bowels in order? Get the fuck out!
But I'm in the middle of...
I said get out! If you've ever been in a public restroom while someone was on a cell phone, you've maybe experienced this awkward, one-sided conversation.
Hey, how's it going?
Going good. Just shaking the dew off the old lily.
Hey, I'm on the phone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I see that for a moment? Excuse me, my phone's about to break.
What?
Have you ever seen someone do this?
Sorry, just didn't want to touch anything with my hands.
Well, that's great for you, Jackie Chan of the can. But now you've managed to get the urine off the floor and onto the handle that I have to touch with my hand. How would you like it if I peed on your hand? Cup your hands. I said cup your hands. My last tip is for home use. When the bathroom's not being occupied, please don't close the door. It's confusing to the rest of the people at the party. If the door's closed, that means it's occupied. If the door's open, go on in. And if it's ajar, that means enter at your own risk. I'm Adam Corolla, and that's bathroom etiquette. Oh, Jesus Christ! Who shit this place up? I believe that almost all hatred is envy and shame in some, sort of mixed up version of envy and shame. And what I'm saying is this, and I'll get back to the Jews in a second, so everyone sit tight. If you say to me, you're short or you're dumb or you're ugly or whatever, I'll just kind of keep moving. If they say you're a bad dad, you need to spend more time with your kids, I'll stop and I'll start getting angry. Right. Because it'll trigger something in me. And it's probably a shame. It's probably a part of me that thinks maybe I should spend some more time. Something will strike a chord. You know what I'm saying? So just the general insults, sort of, you're just driving down the freeway of life. Somebody cuts you off. They flip you the bird. That's just one guy cuts you off and flipped you the bird. You're moving on. But when they hit something that's close, that feels shameful, then the rage. Right. And I feel like the Jews show up and shame the shit out of everybody because they're family oriented, they're educated oriented, they stick together and they kick ass. And the people who aren't doing so great around the Jews look at the Jews and now they have a choice. You can either emulate with the Jews or you can find a mirror, look into it and figure out what you're doing wrong. Certain amount of shame involved with that. And then emulate what the Jews are doing through a whole bunch of hard work and studying and getting up early and staying late. Or you can go, fuck that, we're blowing them up.
Exactly. Well, but by the way, Jew hatred, going back to Muhammad, is in a sense related to what you're saying, because he walked around saying, look, I'm the final prophet. And there were a lot of Jews in that area at the time, no longer. And the ones who were most resistant to his supposed final prophecy were the Jews, because they had several thousand years of already established monotheism. And so at first he was nice to them, thinking that he would be able to convert them to follow him. And to the extent that they were the ones who were most vociferously against the idea of following him, he turned from being nice to them to being, an endemic Jew hater.
Mark, do you have any, does that ring true to you at all?
I like to often say, contrary to the public pronouncement, that the Jews are a lost tribe of the Armenians.
Yeah, my wife is Armenian, so we've got both angles covered.
Well, I was going to ask you that, because if you're from Lebanon, the Armenian community there is about as strong, and it was extremely welcoming up until the war. I mean, the war was just unbelievable, because we got hit as well as the Christian community there, although there's still a pretty good sampling of Armenians that are there.
Right. I think right now we're probably in Lebanon, and maybe somebody will correct me if I'm wrong on my demographics. It's probably 1/3 Christian, 2/3 Muslim. But until very recently, Lebanon had more Christians than Muslims. The Jews were always very small. Probably the zenith of the community was about 20,000, maybe.
Well, the Jews
you know what I did? We had such an influence on it. I actually opened a restaurant in downtown L.A. that serves Lebanese Armenian food because I love the food so much, and they had such a great impact and influence on Armenian food. So I'll have to take you there, Doc. I wish I was there. I'd take you there for lunch.
Next time or whenever you come back. I'm here for another month, so I'll
if you're here for a month, we're going down to 10E. We'll take Adam as well.
Oh, look forward to
I've
it.
never had this thought before, but the Jews, by virtue of what I just said, sort of family, responsibility, focus, education, are always going to be a few down in numbers because they're not cranking out 15 kids and then moving on to Florida and having 4 more kids and singing blues. There's no blues singing Jews.
Usually the Jewish and the Armenian women like to limit production to 2, especially if they get one of each gender. Then they tell you they're out of production.
You know, it's so funny you're saying this because that's you just described my family reality. We have a boy, we have a girl. I'm keen to have more. My wife said the shop is closed. We're done.
Right, exactly. What, you've got an Armenian wife, right?
Exactly.
So you can never...
That's Paulette. You got a boy, you got a girl, you're done.
Yep, I got a boy and I got a girl and I'm done too.
That's Lynette. Lynette's got a little Jew and Armenian in her too.
I know. Well, you know, the Italians, I always said, the Italians are just sort of dumb, good-looking Jews. The Jews are always going to be down on numbers. And as long as, you know, I believe if you come to a society like the United States where we have envy, we just don't act on it. And you end up being wildly successful without the, the pesky genocide part creeping in. But these other regions, they don't have as much self-control.
And what's incredible is that Westerners don't appreciate the extent to which Jew hatred is part of every fabric of Middle Eastern society, right? If it rains, damn Jews. If it's sunny, damn Jews. If a squirrel is bothering you, of course, he's a Zionist squirrel. There is no end to the extent to which, and I mean, it sounds facetious, but it really isn't. I mean, I could give you actual examples where animals were accused of being Zionist Jewish pigs. So, for example, a few years ago in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, there was a rare attack by some sharks on some tourists in the Red Sea. Well, the Egyptian, media and so on argued that this was planted by the Jews to harm the tourism industry in Egypt. So, I mean, it's just endless.
The thing I'm most interested in is how obsessed we are in this nation of, a few months back there was a lot of anti-Semitic this, and Trump is ushering in this new sense of anti-Semitism and this, that, and the other. None of it ever, there's dribs and drabs of it. To say it doesn't exist is not true, but to say it doesn't exist reasonably to affect an average Jew's life is accurate. So why don't we move on to bigger pictures? Why do we just sit here with our anti-Semitism at a 0.3 and beat ourselves up constantly when the rest of the world's at a 10?
Well, I would say, by the way, that the Trump phenomenon that you just described wasn't only restricted to Jew stuff. I mean, on my personal Facebook page, every single person who despised Trump would sort of testify to the fact that they are afraid to now go out into the street. So I'm a brown woman who attends the University of Maine, and I'm afraid to now go out into the street because there's going to be, rape detention centers where he rapes all of. It's I call it collective Munchausen. It's a form of right.